everybody. I'm George Williams. I am the Next Search Catalog Coordinator at Northeast Kansas Library System in Lawrence, Kansas.
I'm Christopher Brannon with the Coeur d'Alene Public Library and the Cooperative Information Network.
So it's the end of the year. We're going to talk today about doing some things to manage calendars and to help your staff know what the upcoming closure dates are at your libraries. And we'll talk a bit about how we came to this idea and how we've implemented it slightly differently. We are members of koha-US. We do this for the fun of it and to help create some content for koha-US. And if you go to the Learn page and click on video playlists, that's where you will find all of our terrific videos that come out every other Thursday. This most recent episode, we're talking about the batch permissions modifier. But if you go to YouTube, you can subscribe to our videos, and that way, every time there's a new one, you'll get notified that there's a new one. And you can make comments. We love to get comments, and we try to answer the comments that we get. But you'll find other things on the koha-US page, other information about how to use Koha, how to set it up, development, other software that you can use in conjunction with Koha. It's a great resource for finding out everything you want to know about Koha. Well, let me start off by saying, in the Bywater Solutions Slack channel about a week or so ago, there was a conversation that was started by Andrew at the Dubuque Library about creating a report. He had created a report for showing upcoming closures on the calendar, and then how to plug that into a display on the front page, on the home page of the staff client. And then I saw that Christopher jumped in there and did some other things with it. And then I had some ideas of how I wanted to use it. So I said, let's, in the next week or so, let's figure out what we want to do with these things, and then we can talk about how we're doing it and how we're doing it differently. So I'll let Christopher talk about what he's doing at his library first.
Yeah, and I like hanging out on the Slack channel and looking once in a while. I don't watch stuff closely all the time, but when Andrew brought this report up, I thought it was an interesting idea because, for one, I feel like Koha is a little bit lacking with calendars. There's just not a lot that we're taking advantage of with the calendars. Right now, we can plug things into the calendars, but it's unless you're involved with the calendars in Koha, it's out of sight, out of mind, and the calendars can do more if you let it and take advantage of it and work with it more. And I'm hoping that developers will do more with it in the future. But right now, unless you have that permission to work on the calendars, you don't see them. You don't see the things in there, and that calendar can give you more information than what it's doing right now. Right now, the calendars, you can set the calendars in there, and those calendars can have an effect on your checkout dates. That's helpful, but wouldn't it be nice if staff could, see events that are happening in the calendars? I mean, what if the calendar did more than just, had to do anything with circulation? What if you could post other things in the calendars, events that people could see and plan for, and this is a step in that direction. And we're taking advantage of what's there and what we can access through jQuery and reports, and making it usable for staff in this case. I may play with this and try and do something on the OPAC side for patrons to see at some point. But for now, this is a good stepping off point. And let me go ahead and show you what we've done. You're going to see some things here that I've not shared necessarily. Well, let's see here. I may have shared with one or two people that have asked for it, but I haven't put this piece out there. But the alerts that usually show up down at the bottom for the what's normally called the purchase suggestions, we've renamed it as material requests, and the patron accounts, those are down usually at the bottom. We've moved that up here. I'm making this more of a notification area rather than having people look all over the place for things. But we have our news panel here, and then this is the section that we're going to focus on is the upcoming closures section. This is pulling information from the calendars, basically within the next 4 weeks, any events, special events that are coming up in those calendars. And so Andrew put together this report, and I tweaked this report a little bit so that I could break this down by library. And so we have this report, which we'll share a link here, and I'll share my flavor of the report. I don't know if Andrew has shared his out in the library, but I'll share mine in the library. But mine is pretty much his, except for I broke it down so that it would ask about the branches. So when you run the report, it's looking at the calendars, but it's asking what branch that you want to look at. And when you run the report, you'll get the upcoming information here. And so I have this report, it feeds back this information, and now I have some jQuery that I've put together to break that down and display it. Now, Andrew gave me some jQuery to play with. Again, I don't know if this is out in the library. He shared this in Slack.
Well, I can tell you that the SQL is in the SQL library.
Okay. So I'll add my flavor of this to it, but my flavor breaks this down a little bit. His takes this information and throws it in a table, which is great. And I believe that's what you're doing.
Yeah.
But I wanted this to look a little more polished and fit the area that I was putting it in and be a little bit more concise. So I took out the table element of this and basically got it to extrapolate the information piece by piece, and I have placed it in specific places so I'm using each individual element rather than just an entire table. I'm using the elements and formatting them to look pretty on our page. So this jQuery is a little bit longer than what he has, but basically it's grabbing the information with a getJSON, and then for each of those pieces of information, it's formatting the dates, and it is placing the closure data in the right places, and formatting it within divs so that it looks pretty much like this. I've formatted it to match the other elements that we have up in this side panel, so that it kind of fits in with it. It doesn't scream, oh, this is something just thrown in there. And I like the layout and the formatting a lot. I've had good response from it. And the only thing that I don't like about this, and I am noticing that we're missing something here. We're missing a couple pieces. It's not showing Christmas Day and New Year's. Hey folks, just a side note here. Since we recorded this video, we learned a little bit more about this issue that I ran into during the recording, where we were not getting all the holidays. As you can see here on the page now, I have all 4 holidays on here. And the problem that we ran into is that at some point in Koha, Koha updated the reporting so that if you used a parameter within your report multiple times, it would only ask for it once rather than multiple times, which was a really great enhancement for report writing. So I have this parameter looking at the branch, asking for the branch, but it's asking for the branch about 7 different times within the report. Only ask for it once when you run the report, but it is calling that parameter 7 different times. And what's happening is in the jQuery, that's getJSON, is using a module that's streamlined for getJSON that is not the same as the module that you actually run reports from. You're using guided reports.pl. Here, you're just using a module that doesn't even have a tag. It's a report. You're calling the report, and then you specify the parameter. Well, normally when I run the report, I only have to enter that once. And this module did not get updated to work with that specific thing. When I run the report, when I actually run the report and call for the information, you can see that the parameter is only specified once up here in the URL. But this module in jQuery doesn't like that. And that's why I was missing some events in my report, because I was only entering 1 out of the 7 parameters, because technically it is 7 times. So the way around that was to add the parameter, call that parameter, specify that parameter 6 more times. So this is basically how this URL is going to end up looking when you're done. So when you run a report in Koha, in jQuery, pay attention to how many times you're calling a parameter. It's not going to match what you see when you normally run the report. You're going to have to make sure that you are calling that parameter however many times it's needed in the actual SQL. All right, back to the video. That's how we're basically doing this.
It's very cool. I like that it's right there. It's in one spot. And just for alerting staff to, what are the upcoming holidays, that's perfect. The situation I have though, is at the beginning of each year, I ask the directors, the library directors, to either go in and make sure all of their holidays for the upcoming year are set in their calendars, or to contact me and I will fill that data in for them. And so when I saw the commentary on the Slack channel, and I saw that you guys had put this into the homepage, I thought that's what I should do. But I wanted to get more in there because I wanted to cover a whole bunch of bases, and I wanted to remind everybody, these are the holidays for the whole year for what's coming up at your library. So that's kind of what I did. Is I've got, this is the koha-US demo site, and I put all this stuff in here. But what I've got is a table that's showing, these are the close dates, and the titles of the dates, and the frequency, how often they happen. And the report that I've got written shows all the upcoming holidays for the next 12 calendar months. So this will go all the way through to the end of 2023, since we're in December now. Or it should go up till, we're in December now, so it should go to the end of November of 2023. But it'll have the date, and I've also got the day of the week. I wanted to plug that in there. And I also wanted this frequency. So this Christmas repeats every year on 12/24 and 12/25. I didn't put these dates into the calendar. I just relied on what dates were in there. And then this Monday and Sunday, New Year's Day and Independence Day, I've just got set up to happen in 2023. And we could even go in here right now into the tools. I actually already have this open. Let's go here. And let's say maybe we've decided this library is going to be closed every Sunday. We put that in there and then refresh the table. It's going to say this library is closed on Sundays, and it repeats every week. So I wanted to cover all the holidays, and not just the holidays, but the regular weekly closures, because that way the anybody at the library can look at that without. We have the calendar tool locked down so that only the directors can see it. So this way, everybody at the library can see it, but only the director can go in and manage it. And I think that is one of the issues with the calendar in Koha, is that you have to have permission to see that, to use that tool in order to be able to even see what's on it.
Right.
And of course, like you, I've got this tied in. So if we switch branches, if I set the library to, I put in some holidays for the West branch. So if I reload this with the West branch, it's going to have the closures just for that branch. And I went, since I'm doing some different things, this takes a report. And so I will put this report into the report library. But the report that I wrote is a little bit different than what you wrote and what Andrew had. But essentially, it's looking at both of those tables. It's looking at repeating holidays and special holidays both, and calculating what are the ones coming up in the next 12 months. And it would not be, if you wanted to use this same report to just do the next 4 weeks or the next month or the next 2 months, it wouldn't be that hard to rewrite it for that. But that report, the data is being pushed into a report that can be accessed through JSON. And the HTML on this part of the page is just coming from the intranet main user block. And what I've got is everything that creates that table except the actual rows of the table. And then I've got some jQuery, and what it's doing is it's saying whenever I see that I'm on the home page and that there's data in this area, it's going to find the table by the table ID, which I think was closures table. And then it's going to pump all of that data into each row. It's going to append all of those rows with the data in it to the tables. So it was just kind of a different way of doing exactly the same thing that you and Andrew were doing. It's just that I had a different goal in mind, because I want this to be something for the library directors to look at the beginning of the year as a way of reminding them of what holidays do I need to fill in for the next 12 months.
Right. And you're using that block section that's defined for that page, which is really good because, well, okay. I'm thinking about, anytime that we write some jQuery, something that uses getJSON, it's important to make sure that is not, because of how jQuery is structured. Every time that you load a page, you're going through that jQuery. And so even if you're not displaying that stuff, if you're not setting up that getJSON in a condition, like, if you're on this page or whatever, that is running the report every time that jQuery is loaded.
Yeah.
And that's something to keep in mind whenever you're using something like this. Always, keep these in conditions so that it's not running every single time you load a page.
Well, and that's one of the things you can do in the report. So let me go back to that report here for a second. There is this, if you want the data to go into the OPAC or out and just be wild on the internet, you can make the report public. I try very hard to avoid doing that. When a report is public, I make very sure that it doesn't have any confidential information going into the report. But there's also underneath that is cache expiry.
Right.
So for the purposes of this discussion, I set that number really low. Let me flip over to my
There are some
system.
instances where, like I want if information to be up to date every time it's loaded, then yes, you'll want to set that cache differently. But if, for something like this, it doesn't matter that it's cached for a little while.
Yeah, and that's what I've got here is this is my circulation page. I've got a table that's populated by a report. And this is all the contact information. It's all public information, so I'm not worried about people seeing it because all this information is public information. But this report is populated on my circulation page, and it's the contact information, an easy place for other libraries in our system to find the contact information for the other libraries. But I've got the cache expiry for the report that generates this table set to 12 hours. So that way, every time somebody loads the circulation page, it isn't reloading that, it isn't rerunning that report. It's only rerunning it every 12 hours to repopulate that. So that's one of the ways you can avoid doing that. If it's something where you feel like the report has to update every time you load the page, that's going to put some pretty serious workload onto SQL for you. If it's a big report. So,
and you did a presentation at Pueblo a few years ago talking about getJSON, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I did a demonstration of how I added the when you check an item in, I've got a package of jQuery relying on a report that will tell you if the item has a damage status on check-in, because that isn't built into Koha. Koha doesn't tell you when you check an item in. It doesn't alert you if there's a damage status. So whenever an item is checked in, it runs a report on that barcode, and that's a case where I do want that to run every time that the page is reloaded, because it needs to check for that.
And there might be accurate information.
Yeah, because I want the information to be accurate. There might actually, now it's a few years later, there might be a way to do that. Maybe I can talk to Lucas at Bywater about seeing if there's an API call that I could be making instead.
Right. In fact, when you were showing that, I was jumping on the getJSON bandwagon, but then, I found out later that there are APIs out there that you don't have to run on a dedicated report. So it eliminates that portion, but the APIs are limited to certain parts of the database. So, you can't get an API for absolutely everything. I doubt there's an API for the calendar, but I could be wrong. But
there is not. I looked.
Okay.
When we started looking at this, that was one of the first things that occurred to me is that could I do this with an API? And there isn't currently. I think the issue with that damage status is I think you can't, I'm not sure if I can use a barcode number. You might have to get the item ID number, which complicates things.
APIs are good if you're accessing record information, patron information, or if you're accessing item information. But stuff outside of that, it's questionable whether you'll find an API for that. But I always recommend, if you can do it with an API, do it with an API, because that eliminates the need to have a dedicated report hanging out there that could disappear, or something could happen to that.
The report could be damaged.
Right.
And the API is generally faster too.
Yeah, it does not create as much of a load on the system. So
yeah.
Use an API where you can, and we have videos on APIs out there. But we also have stuff on the getJSON, and both are great ways of accessing information that are normally not available on the page. I I love the fact that we can get what we need out of the data tables with a report, and then get that information into a jQuery so that we can utilize it. So, but you got to use it wisely, because again, it does eat up resources if you're running a report. And if your report is not well structured, it's one of those ones that takes a long time to get what it needs, that can slow your page down. So
yeah,
you've got to use that wisely.
yeah.
So yes, you can pull your calendar information, and if you write your jQuery right, you can get all the information. But yeah, fun stuff. We were just talking about this prior to recording, that the calendar is great. I would love to be able to see more from the calendar in the future. When I was putting this together, we have some staff that put the dates in for the different libraries. They request the days to be scheduled in there, so that circulation doesn't have due dates on closed days. So we put those days in there, but when the dates were in there, they were not labeled. They were just dates, and because nobody looks at it or thinks about it otherwise. And so when I decided to try this out, I had to go back in there and label everything. So
Yeah,
labeling your dates is important, and be accurate, be accurate with your labelings on there, so it makes sense to everybody, not just closed or whatever. But I mean, we do have, there are some days that libraries are just closed and don't operate. So I mark those as closed, but I mark the other ones as holidays or holidays observed, things of that nature, with those labels.
yeah. I try to give every date that I add to the calendar a title and a description. And I've actually, one of the things that I do have set up in my system, and maybe this is something we can do on another episode, but if I go in and add a date on, like if I were to mark December 5th is closed, I'll just call it just testing. As soon as I click save, I have some data, some text that pre-populates that says holiday added by the logged in username. Oh, I can't see that one because it's a past date. It's a holiday added by by G. Williams at Nichols. So that way there's no way somebody can add something to the calendar without there being a record of who it was and when they did it. And I know that I can get that data out of the action logs. I think I can get that data out of the action logs, but this way it's there in the description where anybody that has access to that can see it. And it's come in handy a couple of times where I've had a library director say, well, I didn't mark that date as closed. And I can say, well, it says in the note that you did. So,
and working on this, another thing came up that I actually put a bug out on, and I'll have the bug number here for everyone as well to chime in on, was that when we're showing upcoming closures, you can't specify if you're doing an early closure. If I put something in a date, it closes that entire date. There's no way to put anything in the calendar other than dates that you're closed, really, which limits the calendar. And I'm hoping, with the bug that I've put out there, that at some point we'll be able to add things to the calendars that don't affect, circulation. Like, if you want to specify in a calendar that you are closed early on a specific day for purposes of this nature, we could do that.
yeah, that would be neat just to have a note in the calendar that says, we closed early because of snow on December 3rd because of a snowstorm or something. Or
maybe you want to take advantage of the calendar and list events that are going on.
Yeah.
Be able to show that on the OPAC at some point. That would be really helpful. So I see some growth that could happen in the calendar module a bit. But for now, this is nice. But it would be nice to be able to put other things in the calendar that don't affect the system the way that these closed dates do.
Well, I think the one change that could happen to actual close dates that would be a benefit to everybody is if you could specify the first Monday in September, or the fourth Thursday in November. Holidays that repeat, but not necessarily on the exact same date.
Yeah.
Because right now in Koha, you're limited to, you can create a yearly holiday for for Christmas, because Christmas is always on 12/25. But this year, Christmas is on a Sunday, and most of my libraries are already closed on Sunday, so they want to also close on the 26th. There's no way to specify those kinds of it repeats yearly, but it's not necessarily on the exact same date.
Thanksgiving
or Labor Day. Labor Day is always the first Monday in the United States, at least. Labor Day is always the first Monday in September, and there's no way to say always close on the first Monday in September. You've got to enter it as a date.
We have a lot of holidays that do that rather than on a specific day of the year. So yeah, it's that would be tremendously helpful. So
yeah,
one of the things that this also brought to mind, and maybe this needs to be a bug, maybe it needs to be a discussion in the community, is I see this left-hand panel on the homepage as an opportunity for growth. I've stuck my alerts up there, but you got the news panel, and we've stuck the upcoming closures. Andrew just demonstrated something on the Monday minutes for today, December 6th, for Bywater, where they're putting a reminder up in that section to remind staff to pull their new items and change whatever they have to do with them, pull labels and put them in a new category or whatever.
Yeah, a reminder that it's a reminder to pull the new books off of the new bookshelf that are more than 6 months old. And Monday was yesterday. Your day off, man.
Yes, that's right. I'm sorry. December 5th. I was gone yesterday, so I watched it today. So. But December 5th, Monday minutes. But yes, I see that left panel on that homepage becoming something where eventually it would be nice if we developed things that were like widgets. We could have something like the plugins, but something that libraries could say, okay, I want this widget over here, and then they could configure it or whatever. But just widgets that go over in that section that report things that we want to see and be reminded of.
Right.
I see that as a great enhancement for Koha down the road.
Cool. That's a good idea.
So, all right.
Well, Happy New Year, everybody.
Yeah.
What did we figure? This would be the 29th?
This will be 22nd is when this one's
22nd. Oh, Merry Christmas, everybody.
So, yeah.
And then I guess we'll see you all again on January 5th. Yeah.
And just a reminder, we post our videos on our on the koha-US.org website, but you will find our playlist at youtube.com/koha-US, no dash. And please check us out there. Remember to like our videos, comment on our videos. We want to hear back from you. And subscribe to our channel so you're notified when our videos come out. We don't have that functionality on our website right now. So going through YouTube is the best way to get notified when these videos do come out.
Either that or just go to our website every day. You get to work in the morning, first thing, you log in, check out koha-US.
That should be your life. All right. Thank you. See you in a couple weeks.